Hi everybody, today I'm doing like an intro to beading or a brand new beginning jewelry video for you. If you're new to beading and you don't know what to do but you're holding some wire, this video is for you. So for starters, I'm using the 49 strand Beadalon wire. The difference between the different strands, there's a 7 strand, there's different, like here's a 7 strand for example, is how many strands of thickness they have making the wire itself. So for example, I've been to where they process these. They take a big ingot of silver metal, let's say, and they splice it till they get these little teeny tiny micro size threads of wire. I mean microscopic. I think they get down to 1 millimeter. And then they take those, it's like one of these, you can't even see it so thin, basically. And they blend them together in strands to create one piece of wire. So for each one of those microscopic wires, they blend them together to create a 7 strand, which is 7 strands of those thin wires, for example. Or they'll do 49 strands together. I hope I'm explaining this the right way, to create a thicker strand. Then on top of that, it will make it more flexible, easier to use, stronger, and a better quality. So technically speaking, a 49 strand is a thicker, better quality wire than a 7 strand because it's made stronger to last longer. Now within those strands, you have different gauges of how thick this is. So this one is 0.46 millimeter. This one is going to be thicker than a 0.30 millimeter or the 0.15. The larger the number, the thicker the wire. So if you're using the 0.46, let me see what else I got 49 here. I got 0.61. This bad boy is really thick right here. This is made to support a thicker, heavier bead. Now, the thicker the wire, the larger the round crimp you will need, or the larger the crimp tube you will need. So this uses a 2 and a 3. This one uses a 1 round or a number 2 crimp tube. This one uses a 2 or a 3 round or 2 and a 3 crimp tube. So if you buy a wire, you want to make sure you have the right size crimp tube or round to go with it. What that means is when you take your wire and you bend it like this, you're going to do what's called crimping. We'll get to that in a minute. You want to make sure this wire can go through like this in your crimp. If the crimp is too small and this wire is too thick, it won't go back through the crimp like this and you can't crimp it down. So it won't be able to fit. So that's what the sizing means. You want to make sure it's large enough to fit the width of your wire. Okay, so I'm using the 0.46, and with that, I'm using the number 1 round. Now, a round is going to be a short, round, smaller crimp. A crimp tube will be longer and round. I'm out of crimp tubes right now, I think. Unfortunately, I need to get some more, but I do have some rounds. And I'll show you what those look like. A round looks like this. So it's going to be round, more flat, round, compact. I'm going to show you kind of what a tube looks like. A tube is going to look more like this when you're using a number 2 crimp. Okay, so I'm using a number 1. And let me cut some fresh wire really quick. Do that, and then we will go through how to crimp from beginning to end. Yay. So you want to cut your wire to desired length. If you're making a 7-inch bracelet, for example, you will need 8 inches to 9 inches of wire. Why? You're taking the wire and you're bending it over. You'll need space to do that. That's about 1 inch. And you'll need one on each side. So if you want 7 inches of bead, you will want 9 inches of wire to be able to fold over and add your crimp. Plus, as you're working with it, you don't want it too short, because otherwise, if it's this short, for example, it's really hard to hold it in your hand, bend it around and add a crimp. It'll go bend back that way. You want to make sure you have enough wire to bend it around and have room to place your crimp and everything. So I'm holding my end here. and I'm going to add the crimp first and slide it on my wire. And now I'm about an inch in. Next, I'm going to use my wire guard or wire protector and slide it in on one side. I use these because they prolong the life of the wire, and the jump rings can go through here and slide on this wire protector instead of directly on the wire, which will cause it to fray and wear out possibly and get extra use over time, which will expose the wire to more elements and use and rubbing on it, etc., etc. It's just better to use a wire guard. So you want to slide through one end, bring it back down through the other end, like so, and then bring it back through your crimp bead, like so. Next, you want to kind of pull your wire down, and it's going to sit in this little curve here that's at the top. Next, I'm grabbing my chain nose pliers. Chain nose pliers are ones that are curved on the end like this. And I'm going to gently press together the two ends together like so, leaving a small gap between the bottoms. You don't want to pinch them too close together, they'll crack. And also you want to have enough room between the top of your crimp bead and the base of the feet of the wire protector so your tool will fit in there. So I'm going to pull this wire down a little bit. So this is a crimping tool. You want to bring the back end first, like so. There's a little bit of room there, and you want to crimp down once. Now you have kind of a curved, flat crimp. So next, I'm going to rotate this around a little bit, and I'm going to press it down with the front part of the crimping tool, like this. Sorry if it's blurry. I'm trying not to make it blurry on my camera. You want to press this down once, and now I've completed a crimp. So you have kind of like a sandwich look or hamburger or shell. You know, it's going to come together like this in folds. And you want to have that fold on there that shows your crimp is completed. Next, I do a little pull test. Yeah, it's on there. It's good and tight. This is a completed crimp. This isn't going anywhere. It's also, if you're not sure, make sure to try and kind of check around. Make sure it hasn't flaked or cracked on the crimp itself. Sometimes if you use certain types of crimp brands, they will, or if you crimp down too hard, or if the crimp size is too big from the wire, it will split the wire, it will crack, it will break, it will fall off your wire. So you want to make sure the crimp size fits the wire size. That way everything lines up and your crimp will hold nice and strong. If it doesn't fit, it won't support your wire. It will just fly off one day when you're wearing your bracelet. So, all right, that's on there good. I'm going to cut off the excess wire and put a wire guard on. Sorry, crimp cover on over my crimp. And gently press down on it using my crimping tools like this. And I kind of round it sometimes. I'll kind of rotate it around it. Like so. And you want to make sure it's on there nice and tight so it doesn't come off. And you've completed a crimp with your crimp cover. It's on there nice and tight at the base of the wire guards, and you're set. Okay, so I've completed my crimp and wire guard and everything on one side. Now I'm going to add beads. Okay, you want to make sure you use a spacer bead that's the right size to the bead it's with. You don't want to have too large of a spacer bead next to too small of a bead. It will overpower it. So I'm gonna kind of add on a couple different beads here, and we'll get on with the rest of our day. Hey, I'm also using a smaller spacer bead next to this one because it has larger drill holes through the middle of them, which will help it hold up against the beads I have on the wire next to it. Sometimes when you have a large drill hole, if it's inconsistent, for example, it might cause the beads next to it to kind of collapse in on it oddly and on the wire, and then it will hang at a tilt. So you want your beads to hang nice and straight on your wire when you're working with them and not be like slanted. That's why you want to have a straight drill hole through your beads. Okay. And just grabbing some of the smaller spacer bead, thinner spacer beads, skinnier spacer, whatever you want to call them here. Okay, bring in a moonstone. And for this one, I'm doing a couple of different shapes and sizes, but they're all pretty similar in how they'll They will be friendly next to each other on the wire is what I'm trying to say. There we go. A larger labradorite. So it looks like the color scheme I'm accidentally putting together here is a light aquamarine labradorite. So we're looking at gray, white, light green, light blue, kyanite. And the kyanite and labradorite are kind of similar to me as they're both slightly gray based. So they'll also complement each other as well. I'm gonna grab a larger piece of turquoise. So because I'm trying to draw the blue in from this clasp, I'm going to use, I want to use a blue piece of turquoise. That's going to be about the same color. There we go. That's going to be our focal bead. And it's kind of a large egg shape, so I'm going to want to bring my beads up in size to complement it. So again, we're not overpowered with too small of a bead up against a larger bead. You want them to be friendly when they sit by each other, so the size and consistency all kind of match so it flows. Also, when I'm using rondelles, I love these beads. I try not to use ones that are too stacked too many, because then it's too much. And I want to use a different color too. Here we go. This turquoise is fantastic. I love it. It's like a rondelle turquoise. There we go. And this will complement that in size. Fantastic. Now these are larger, so I want to use a lighter spacer bead up against them. So I'm going to use a taller one here. And so we have a larger drill hole here on the turquoise. I want to use something that's going to kind of hold it in place. And also, as it's on the wrist, you want it to curve around. If it's too flat on flat, it's going to want to lock in and do this and not do this. You want your bracelet to fit like this and be nice and fluid. So I'm going to add a small rounded one here. Oh, I'm going to do this one instead. Where'd it go? Okay, no, that's not the right one. Here, this one works. I just want something that's rounded. It's going to kind of sit in here and hold it in, so that way the bracelet will curve better. There we go. We'll kind of like pocket that in there just a little bit as it's on your wrist. And it also produces a focal point on the top of your bracelet. So people will kind of see that as it sits on the top. And if it goes off to the edge a little bit because of sizing, that's fine. I'm gonna get some of these other ones here. So I'm mixing different kinds of turquoise together. I'm doing like a genuine Kingman turquoise, dry turquoise mixed with like different shades and types of turquoise, essentially, so you can get different colors out of them. There we go. Especially if you have a low quantity of turquoise, it helps you get as much as you can out of them, spreading them out more. Okay, so I'm gonna do Golly Daisy. So oh, the other thing I do when I'm using the rhinestone ones is because they're rounded out in the middle, is I use a small round spacer bead to help support the rondelle. I can get my wire through there. I'm using a thicker wire on this one. Like so, because this is carved out, it'll help support the rondelle and kind of keep it mobile if you need it to. Sometimes when it's just up straight against a straight one, it'll sit nice, but if it curves, you might have your wire poke out. So it just kind of depends. Sometimes I put a little bit of a round in there just to help curve it, support it a little bit more. So I'm going to go through here again, put this one back on there. You know, you do whatever you feel like is best as you're designing. Okay, I'm going to get back into the aquamarine again. Actually, no, I'm going to do labradorite on this one. Mix it up on both sides. And I'm looking for my small daisy. All right, I'm almost finished with this, and then I'll show you how to close off a bracelet. Thanks for hanging out with me while we build together. Hopefully, kind of feel like we're having coffee and making jewelry together at the same time. Like hanging out. What are you making? What are you making? I'm making this. Cool. Looking for my other aquamarine, sorry. I need to order some more of the aquamarine rondelles. I'm almost out. That's not good. Okay, and I'm gonna use smaller daisy and a moonstone and I might not be able to use that piece of green amethyst. I need to drill the hole in here a little bit larger through the center. Let's see. Yeah, I need to get a new reamer. Dang. All right, that's all right. I'm gonna fish around for another one really quick. So you can get what's called an electric bead reamer. Those will make the center drill hole a little bit larger for your beads to go around your wire. I just need to buy a new one. I'm out. There we go. And also, as I'm working on bracelet, I sometimes hold up to my wrist to kind of figure where I'm at for length. Like, I'm almost done here. So I'm just going to add maybe 1 or 2 more beads and then I will be out of room. So I will not have this exact same bead location, like design on this side because it will be too long, which is fine. If you want it to be the same, you can pull these off, adjust it, add beads on this side so it's exact same pattern on both. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. But that's okay if it's mixed up and looks a little different on one side. I think it gives it character. Just depends on what you want to do, how you feel up to it, but I really want to do that other aquamarine on this side. Oops. And I'm going to find out where I'm at on my length really quick. So this is like an 1.5 inch long clasp, so you'll want to add that in for size on your bracelets. See, I'm already almost full because by the time I add this, you're looking at a 7.5 inch bracelet. So I'm going to stop. All right. I don't know. I might take this one apart when I'm all done to try to even it out because otherwise the turquoise might be... Actually, no. I'm going to do something. I'm going to have it go like this so you don't need to worry about it. Hey. All right. Let's do that. Okay, so here's where I close it off. So this is weighted, which means you're going to have beads. Let me get these out of the way. Which you're going to pull down on your wire, which will want to fight you against crimping it. So if you have too much weight and you're crimping, like don't crimp it with it hanging in the air. It's going to pull down on it and you're going to have a big gap of wire. You want to leave a small gap of wire if you're using larger beads between your crimp. That way, as you're curving this around your bracelet, you want it to curve. If it's too tight, these beads will get locked in stiff like this, and they're going to curve like this, and they're going to fight the wire and potentially snap your crimp off, and then the bracelet will fall apart. So you want to make sure you have enough room for the beads to go back up on the wire for space, but also keep it tight enough to where you don't have a big gap of wire like this. That's not going to work. So I leave, depending on my beads, maybe 2 millimeters of wire. That way, as I'm curving it, let's say it goes back up the wire here, but I also don't have wire gaps along the bracelet, and I don't have a big wire gap at the end. So rule of thumb, test it out a few times before you crimp it down all the way on your wrist. Kind of hold it in place with your hands. Figure out how much room you need to crimp it off all the way, and you know, how much wire you need to leave. Oops. Oh, I didn't have it on there. But I always leave about a millimeter or so of wire, so that way as I'm turning my bracelet around, I have room for it to move around on my wrist. Okay, so I crimped this down, and what I did is I just pulled my wire through and crimped like I did at the beginning, and you see I have a little gap of wire here between the bead and the base of my wire protector. That leaves me enough to add a crimp, as well as give a little bit of room for my beads to move up when I fold the bracelet around. So next I'm going to add my crimp, cover, And you know what? I should probably demonstrate how I did that. You know what? I'm going to show you if you crimp wrong. Let's do that. How to cut it off. So just very carefully, do not cut any of the wire. Cut around the crimp. Just kind of want to take your wire cutters and cut around the outside of it. Do not cut the wire. And you just want to kind of break it down so you can crack the rest off. Like so. See, I got it off. So now my wire is exposed. I'm going to pull it off. There you go. So that's how you get your crimp off without cutting your wire. Just cut around the outside of it and break it down as much as you can, and it should fall off. And I'm going to slide this one back on. So again, I'm going to put my wire on here. Slide up through my wire protector / wire guard. If it will let me now, it's acting dumb. Okay, let's try this one. All right. Sometimes you have to trim the end of your wire too. There we go. Should be better. Okay, I'm going back up through here. There you go. If you use a thicker wire too, you want to make sure you have the right size wire protector. My wire protectors are designed for slightly thinner wire. I'm using like a 0.25 and I usually use a 0.18. So, okay, and I'm going back through my crimp. All right, so my wire, just like I showed you before, back through here and back through the crimp. So I'm going to pull this down and just pull it down. Pull it down and move my crimp up, and I'm leaving some space between, oh, I forgot to push these down a little bit. Here we go. I have some space between the base of my crimp and the top of my bead one, so I have room for my for my crimp cover to go onto there, and I'll still have a little bit of room left for my beads to go back up the wire when I'm turning my bracelet around. So you want to have, again, a little bit of space here for your crimping tool to come in, crimp down, but not too much wire leaving, because otherwise you'll have a big trail of wire at the base of your bracelet. You don't want that. And I'm going to crimp this down. And grab my crimp cover and cover this and crimp down. And there we go. So now I have a little bit of space of wire. Again, that's maybe 2 millimeters for my beads to go back up when I bend my bracelet around. So it's nice and flush, but I don't have any wire gaps on the bracelet itself. And also I had enough room for my crimp cover to get on there. So this is how you begin and end crimping a bracelet.